Silber good? Oh. Good to see you, my friend. All right, Devosai. Good morning, good morning. Good morning, a good Chodesh. So first of all, I want to say a mazel tov to all of us for being assigned Meseches Zvachim. What a beautiful 120-day journey it was. And now today we have the great zchus to go ahead and begin Meseches Menachos. A welcome back, Baruch Hashem, to everyone. There's a very short bein hazmanim, between yesterday afternoon and this morning. So Baruch Hashem, we are back, and welcome back to those who are back. Because I see some new faces, I look forward to getting to know you. In Meretz Hashem, I'll just begin as a hakdama to Meseches Menachos with a beautiful vart that has nothing to do with Meseches Menachos, but has everything to do with Mincha. So the Rabbi Yitzchak Berditchev, he asks a very interesting question. He says, why is it that Mincha is called Mincha? He says, I understand Shachris is called Shachris because you daven it in the morning, and Ma'ariv is called Ma'ariv because you daven it at night. But what's Mincha? What's Mincha? Why is Mincha called Mincha? So you could know that it's related to the carbon Mincha, although again, we're going to discuss coming from Menachos and everything, but what's the pshat? So the Rabbi said something so beautiful. He said that to daven Shachris and Ma'ariv is intuitive. I wake up in the morning, there's a whole day ahead of me filled with incredible uncertainty. I have to daven to the Ribbon Shalom. Meaning, I need it. I recognize as soon as I open my eyes and I say Moda'ani, I recognize one thing, which is that the coming day is filled with incredible uncertainties. I do not know ma yavo yom, and as such, I need HaKadosh Baruch Hu in my life. I have to daven Shachris when I go to sleep or when it's nighttime. So nighttime itself is filled with incredible uncertainty. But even more than that, when I go to sleep, this Chazal tell us sleep is 1/60th of death. I give my neshama back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And again, filled with incredible uncertainty. I do not know what is going to be. And therefore, I have to daven Ma'ariv. But says the Rebbe, do I have to daven in the middle of the day? Do I have to daven Mincha? Not really. In other words, I'm covered by Shachris and Ma'ariv. So what's the pshat with Mincha? So he says Mincha means an offering. An offering. When I daven in the middle of the day, I'm saying, Yibon Shalom, you know what? I don't have to daven now. I don't have to do it. But I'm offering you something up. A mincha doesn't just mean like a meal offering, like we're going to discuss. But a mincha also means a gift. I daven in the middle of the day, says the Rebbe, as a gift to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I don't need anything new. Whatever I need it for, I already asked you for in the morning. Whatever I'm going to need, I'm going to ask you for in the evening. But I'm davening again. Why? Why? Because I can. Because I can. Because I want to connect with you. Because I yearn for a dveikus. I yearn for a sense of connection. That's why I'm davening. Says the Rebbe, that's why the midday prayer is called a mincha. It's a gift. It's connection for the sake of connection. It's connection because I have such a yearning, such a pining to connect with the emotional. Mosai, it's a gift. I thought to myself, we're beginning Meseches Menachos. And I will say, the truth is, there's only one reason you learn Meseches Menachos. And it's the same reason that you learn Meseches Zvachim, which is that you love the Ribono Shel Olam so much. It's kind of like the same way. Why do people go on family vacations? Right? No one ever goes on family vacations. I really need to relax and rejuvenate. Let me take away my whole mishpacha with me, right? And spend 2 weeks together with people who I love so much. No one does that. Why do you do that? You do that because you love your mishpacha. You do that because you love them. And when you love someone, you do things, even though I'd rather personally be doing something else. I'd rather be elsewhere. I'd rather be doing. But when you love someone, when you love something, you give yourself to them, even in ways that perhaps would not be the lachatchila for you. But we're in the middle of difficult masechtas. These are difficult masechtas. What we wouldn't give for a brachas. A brachas, right? What I wouldn't give for a tilas hashachar, what I wouldn't give for Shabbos, even Yavamis is looking good these days, right? What I wouldn't do for those like more yeshivish masechtas that I could relate to a little bit more, there's a bit more halacha l'maisa, but I will say, this is mincha. This is mincha. You learn these Masechtas that were so many years, besides for the Briskers, were neglected Masechtas. They were neglected Masechtas. Right? No one was learning them. The Lublina Rav said that there are Masechtas in Shas that are orphan Masechtas. Nobody's learning them. And there's still the Ribono Shel Olam's Torah. So Menachos, you know how many generations Menachos was neglected? Because at the end of the day, without a Beis HaMikdash, a lot of the information contained in here is not so relevant or pertinent to our day-to-day lives. But I will say, but we're coming back and we're sweeping up the Yisomim. We're going ahead and we're taking the orphan Masechtas and we're learning them. And the truth is, I'd rather be learning something else. I'd rather be involved in something else because it's not the most riveting, as much as it's going to be riveting for us, but for other people, it's not the most riveting Masechtas. We'll say, but we do it, why? Because I love HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We're beginning Maseches Menachos, and it's a mincha to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ribono Shel Olam, I'm here, and I'm learning your Menachos for one simple reason. Because I love you. I don't have to. I could fulfill my obligation in Talmud Torah with other more pertinent, interesting, or riveting chalakim of Torah, but someone has to learn your Meseches Menachos. Someone has to show you that they love all parts of your Torah, not just the Arachayim parts, not just the Yamim Tovim parts, not just the Kashrus parts. Someone loves all parts of your Torah. It's the Mincha, Rabosai. It's the learning for the sake of connection. It's the learning for the sake of Dveikus, and that is the sacred task we have in front of us today. So there are going to be parts of the Masechta that you're going to say to yourself, oh my gosh, you're going to be looking every day to how many blot is this again? What is this? You know, I will say, but understand that every single time you show up and every single time you learn the blot of Gemara from a Masechta that has been neglected for so long, you're saying, Ribono Shel Olam, I'm here for one reason and one reason only. And it's not because I'm getting smicha and menachas. And it's not because I plan on being the chief dayan in the third Beis HaMikdash. I'm here because I love you. I'm here because I love you. And when you love someone, sometimes you do things, even though, for me, I'd rather be doing something else. But if it's important to you, it's important to me. If it's important for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to have Maseches Menachos, then it's important for us to learn it. To both say, this is Mamish, the Mincha Gedola. We're doing it not because we have to. Not because we have to. There are other things we can do. But we're doing it because we can, for the sake of connection. And with that, Rabbi, we have to say, Ashrenu matov chalkenu. How fortunate we are, Shechiyanu v'kimanu v'giyonu lazman hazeh, that we're going to get to learn Meseches Menachos together. That, like we said by Zvachim, we're going to get to live in the Beis HaMikdash again. We wait every single day for the Bayis Shlishi. It's not yet here, but even though it's not yet here, we get to go ahead and live inside the Beis HaMikdash by learning the halachos pertinent to the Beis HaMikdash. So we'll say it's a great schus in Meretz Hashem to begin this journey with you. And halavai, a lot could happen over the next 100+ days of Menachos. We're starting this Masechta, Meretz Hashem, here in our humble shul in Baltimore, but we should be Zocha Meretz Hashem to be Messiah in a beautiful Bayis Shlishi in a rebuilt Yerushalayim. And I will say with that, let's begin. Kol HaMenachos. I will say now, amazingly enough, what you will see, by the way, after spending all kidding aside, after spending so much time in Zvachim, so we'll say we begin to pick up certain principles, and you're going to see that in fact the opening of Meseches Menachos very much mirrors the opening of Meseches Zvachim. So therefore says the Mishnah, Kal HaMenachos shenikmetzu shelo l'shman ksheros. Any mincha where kamitza was done shelo l'shman. So we'll say very quickly, so we know all these terms already. So kamitza refers to the idea that when it comes to a karban mincha, only a very small part is offered up on the mizbeach. The kohen does kamitza, takes his middle 3 fingers. We saw already a machlokes back in Yuma. We're going to discuss in more Menachos about how kamitza was done. Was it done fingers down or was it done fingers up? Right? So either we'll get into that later on. But lamaisa, if you have a karban mincha and the kamitza was done, shelo l'shman. Look at Tap Rashi. Shelo l'shman ki go shes nadev minchas marchashes v'yevia v'kamtza kohen v'amahareni komis l'shem machvas. So I'll say, we're not going to get into this today, but we're going to make references to the various types of menachos which were offered. There's a minchas marchashas, there's a minchas machavas, where the mincha was prepared in different ways. So the classic case of shelo l'shman means, I pledged what's called a minchas marchashas, for example, and the kohen does the kamitza l'shem machavas. So what's the halacha? Ksheros. The mincha is kosher, but there's a caveat, which is Ella shelo alu lebaylim l'shem chova. But ultimately, again, it does not count towards the obligation of the owner. So we'll say very reminiscent of zvachim. Where so again, if I offer up the mincha shelo lishma, the mincha is a valid offering. But if I'm offering it up to satisfy my own personal obligation, the fact that it was offered up shelo lishma means the mincha is kosher, but it doesn't satisfy my obligation. Which means what? That I would have to bring another carbon mincha in order to satisfy my personal obligation. Chutz minchas chote and minchas kinos. We'll say with two exceptions. The two exceptions ultimately again are a minchas chote. So ultimately again, if I am bringing a mincha as a sin offering, now we'll discuss ultimately when a mincha is brought as a sin offering, because usually a sin offering is a chatas or an asham, which are animal offerings. There are circumstances where usually because of poverty, a person could go ahead and bring a meal offering as a sin offering. So if you offered up a minchas chote, shelo lishman, so we'll say ultimately the mincha is pasul. The mincha is totally invalid and has to be redone all over again. The other example of this is minchas kinos, which is the mincha of a sota. The mincha of a sota, woman suspected of adultery, entire process, she's brought to the Beis HaMikdash, there's a carbon mincha that is brought. If either of these two menachos was offered up shelo lishma, not only does it not discharge the obligation of the owner, but the mincha itself is fundamentally invalid. Why that distinction? We'll see in the Gemara. Minchas chote and minchas kinos. So now the Mishnah chooses to go on and expound on minchas chote and minchas kinos. So minchas chote, minchas kinos, shekamtzon shelo lishman. So if you have a minchas chote, which Rabbi say is a mincha that is brought as a sin offering, or minchas kinos, which is the mincha of the sota, shekamtzon shelo lishman. You went and you did kamitza shelo lishman. In other words, Rabbi say, remember again, shelo lishman means what? This means what? I did it for mincha, just the wrong mincha. The Kohen. Remember, this is a problem with the Kohen. I don't mean to. I'm sorry. This is a problem with the Kohen, the Kohanim, right? Because remember, as a Yisrael, I have nothing to do with the kamitza. I don't do kamitza. The issue over here is the Kohen invalidated my mincha by going and having in mind for the wrong type of meal offering. So minchas chote, minchas kinos, shekamtzon shalishman. So what are examples of that? Nasan b'kli, v'halach viktir shalishman. So for example, let's say again, he put the kamitza in a kli, and he did holacha and haktara shalishman. So either he transported the kamitza, or he went ahead and put it on the mizbeach shelo lishman, not for the right purpose. We'll say these are all examples of where the mincha will become invalid. Now here's another interesting case. O lishman u'shelo lishman, o shelo lishman u'lishman psulos. And then I will say by these. Now remember again, we have two different categories. In general, what is the halacha if you offer up the kamitza of a mincha shelo lishman? What's the general halacha? Mincha is kosher, but what? Doesn't satisfy the obligation of the owners. The exception to that rule is minchas chote, minchas kinos, a chatas mincha, and ultimately again a sota mincha. Those, if you do anything shelo lishman, those are wholesale invalidated. They're just simply pasul. Now the Mishnah is introducing to me a new example, which is the case of lishman and shelo lishman, or shelo lishman and lishman, which effectively are cases where what? You have multiple levels of das. There's a time, so let's see. So the Gemara says, if the Mishnah says, if you offer up, now again remember, this is still a reference to the minchas chote and the minchas sota, the minchas kinos. Two specific cases. If you had in mind lishman or shelo lishman or lishman, psulos. It's the case. And what's the case? Here we go. Case of lishman for shelo lishman. We'll say, what's an example of a case of lishman and shelo lishman? For example, l'shem minchas chote, l'shem minchas nedava. So for example, we'll say, let's say I'm offering up a minchas chote, right? A mincha that is being offered up as a sin offering, and I begin the process with the right das, and then at some point in time in the process, my das switches to a minchas nedava. That's an example of a case of lishman, starts out lishman, but then switches over to shelo lishman. Now again, we're going to discuss the mechanics of this in the Gemara, how this actually plays out, and what this actually looks like. But that's the case of lishman or shelo lishman. What's the next case? So l'shem minchas davar shelo lishman v'lishman. What's the example of a case of shelo lishman lishman? L'shem minchas davar will say, I have a minchas chote that I'm bringing, but I begin the process l'shem minchas nadava for the wrong intention, but then l'shem minchas chote. But then I switch at some point in time minchas chote. So we'll say, so remember, In the first case, the Mishnah assumed that I just have a flawed das from beginning to end. See, if you have flawed das from beginning to end, so by general menachos, the mincha is kosher, but doesn't satisfy my obligation. By minchas kinos and minchas chote, the carbon itself, the mincha itself, is totally invalid. What the Mishnah now introduces us, what the Mishnah just introduces us to us now, is a secondary case of what? Lishman and Shalom Lishman. Even if at some point in time of the Minchas Kenos, or the Minchas Chote, you had the right das, but mixed in there was the wrong Lishma, the wrong das, that also invalidates the carbon. Again, how that works, the mechanics of that, we'll see in the Mishnah. Beautiful. Well, so it says the Gemara. See? It's pretty good. So far, so good, right? Mamish flows, nice, beautiful. And again, I pointed out, all seriousness, this is almost the mirror image of the first Mishnah Maseches Zvachim as well. So again, the beautiful part about Gemara, especially Daf Yomi, is you get into Talmudic rhythms. You begin to recognize things, begin to see things. Good, we're into this. Says the Gemara, Lama li lemisna ella, listen v'lo alu lebaylim shem chova. Supposed to listen to this. Now the Gemara begins by asking a verbiage question or a syntax question. The Mishnah began by saying, Kol ha-menachos shenikmatzu shelo lishman ksheros ella shelo alu lebaylim. So the Mishnah says any mincha where the kamitza was offered up shelo lishman is kosher, but it doesn't count for the owner. Why do you need that word but? Why do you need ella? Why don't you just say velo alu lebaylim? Why don't you say kol ha-menachos shenikmatzu shelo lishman lo alu lebaylim? Don't count towards the owners. Why do you need the ella? To which the Gemara says, Hakamash Malan, Lebailim Hudalo Alalushim Chova, Hamincha Gufa Kshera. We'll say what it teaches us is as follows: is that halacha lamaisa, when you go ahead and you offer up a mincha and you have the wrong intention, it is kosher, but it doesn't count towards the owners. In other words, say, had it just said, Kalamenacho Shenikmetzu Shalishman Lo Alu Lebailim, I would have thought Lo Alu Lebailim means what? Means what? The carbon itself is totally invalid. So instead, the Mishnah chooses to phrase it in the following way. A mincha whose kamitza was offered up shalo lishman, what's the halacha? Ksheros, ella shalo al lebaylim. So first it says ksheros. Ksheros teaches me that what? The mincha is good. But here's the problem. If you're going to tell me the mincha is good, I would have thought that what does good mean? What does good mean? Good means even for the owners. No, not for the owners. It's a good mincha. You're a good little mincha, a taira mincha, but it does not ultimately count towards the owner's obligation, which then leads us to another important point. Va'asr l'shanuye. And I will say, now the Mishnah adds in, is that even if you've deviated once with this mincha, you should not continue to deviate. Now look at Rashi for just a moment over here. Va'asr l'shanuye, Rashi says, ba shinoi acher. Kigon, im avar v'kamsa shlo l'shma, asr lases kometz b'kli shlo l'shma. We'll say now the Mishnah introduces us to another, or now the Gemara introduces to us, based on the Mishnah, another important idea, which is, just because you did one shinui, does not mean you should continue to be mishana. So we'll say, here's what we have. This is actually a very important point, which is, the Mishnah tells you like this. I have a carbon mincha that I went ahead, and let's say, for example, I set aside as a minchas marcheshes, right? A particular type of mincha. I did a shinui, and the Kohen did it. The Kohen did a shinui, and he offered it up l'shem machavos, which is another type of mincha. So what's the halacha Rabbi saying? The halacha is the mincha is what? The mincha is what? The mincha is kosher, but doesn't count towards the owner. Now the havamina is, maybe once I was mishana, once I already ran ahead and made a shinui, then what? Any subsequent shinuyim don't really matter as well. To which the Gemara comes along and quotes the position of Rabbi that says no. Even though you were mishana now, even though you were mishana once, don't continue to be mishana. To whatever degree you can now, not to whatever degree, but from this point on, even though you did one shinui, I will say, doesn't justify further shinuyim. Once you did one shinui, for the rest of this avoda, continue to go ahead and offer up the mincha as it's supposed to be offered. Or in other words, what's the kiddush of Rava? Just because you were mishana once, not you should continue to be mishana, but rather again you made one mistake. Now continue, fix it, and do the carbon as it was first intended. I will say, hear the incredible musr in this. What's the incredible musr in this? right? Sometimes people think, I made one mistake. I'm done. I'm treif. I'm an isvar. That's it. I'm done. It's not true. Just because you make one shinui, Rabosai, doesn't mean you can't go back to what you were. Doesn't mean you can't get back on track. So you had a minchas machvos, you made a mistake that the kamitza was offered up l'shem marchashas. Does it alter the carbon? The answer is yes. The answer is yes. The carbon is still kosher, doesn't count for the owner, but the carbon is still kosher. Now what's your job? Now your job is to get back on track. Just because you were meshana once, just because you deviated once, just because you made one mistake, doesn't mean you should continue to reinforce the mistakes. Go back ultimately again to what the carbon was supposed to be. Kidirava, Rava, here we go. We saw again, this is great because this is Chazara, right? This is Chazara from 120 days ago. So the Gemara says, V'asal shani kidirava, Da'amar Rava, Ola sheshachta shalol lishma, Asr lizrok damar shalol lishma, because Rava says, if you shechted an Ola shalol lishma, you shouldn't do the zrika shalol lishma. In other words, we'll say, just because you shechted shalol lishma, doesn't mean you should do the rest of the sacrificial process shalol lishma. Ibaysim is svara, ibaysim ikra. But we'll say, now where does Rava get this from? One possibility is that it's a svara, it's logic. The other possibility is that it's based on a pasuk. Ibaysim is svara. So we'll say, what's the svara? Second wide line, Bezim and Aleph. Ibaysim is svara. Mishum devishani bekolhani lishne bevinezel. Just because you made one change doesn't mean you should continue to change. I will say, I can't tell you the incredible musr in this. Sometimes in life we mess up and we make changes in ourselves and we think, once I've messed up once, that's it. What does a further shinui matter? Rabbi say it's mamish not true. Just because I'm meshana once doesn't mean that ultimately again I should be meshana going forward. That's the svara. Say I did the shchita. I did the shchita shalol lishma. Okay, that doesn't mean I should do the zrika shalol. I can't. Doesn't mean I should do the zrika shalol lishma. Even if you messed up the shchita, you could still do the zrika correctly. Such an incredible yisod. So that's the svara. What's the other possibility? That it's based on a pasuk. What's the pasuk? Says pasuk says you shall go ahead and you should honor that which you expressed with your lips, and you should do as you vowed to Hashem your God on nidava. Now, both say nidava. Neder, we'll say you understand the inherent contradiction in the pasuk. We'll say what's the inherent see? You know what the problem is? Let's be honest. We're amongst friends. What's the problem? Is that very often we're not medayik in any pasuk in Chumash Vayikra. Why? Let's be honest. Because most of us tune out for Vayikra, except when there's an occasional story, right? When it comes to karbanos, we're like, okay, I do my shtayim mikra, maybe even do an unkelus. Because when it comes to Shtayim Mikra for Vayikra, I'm not going to understand Rashi. I'm not going to understand Unkelus. I might as well look from and do Unkelus for Shtayim Mikra. Like it looks good, right? So the idea over here is we're not really medayik. We're not really medayik in the Pesukim of Vayikra. So therefore, again, but listen to this. There's an obvious kasha in the pasuk. Motza sasecha tishmar. You shall go ahead and honor that which you expressed with your lips. Va'asisa kasher nadarta l'Hashem Elokecha. You shall do as you vowed to Hashem your God. Nidava, a nidava. What is going on over here? The pasuk's telling me that I made a neder, and then the Gemara says the pasuk says that what you should from is a nedava. Which one is it? Is it a neder or a nedava? Nedava, neder will kari. So the Gemara says kari neder, kari nedava. The Torah is calling the same offering a neder and a nedava. How so? Here we go. El im kimash nadarta asisa yehi neder. Torah is telling me as follows. It will say the case that we're talking about over here is where a person made a neder to offer up a carbon. If you went ahead and carried through on your neder, right? Then shkoyach, excellent. Im kimash nadarta sisi neder. If you promised to give a neder and you were following through with the neder, fantastic. Ve'im lav. But if you messed up, which means what, Rabbi? Which means what? That at the end of the day, I meant to give a neder, but then I messed up. Says the Gemara, Ve'im lav yehi nedava. Which means, I will say, the carbon still works. Even if you're meshana, the carbon still works. Now, you may have altered the carbon, which means what I will say. See, here's the chap. A neder is what type of offering? Obligatory. Remember, when I make a neder, it's an offering. So, if I offer up a carbon and I'm meshana, which means I have the wrong das. Let's say I do it, I shechted shalol l'shma. So what's the status of that carbon? It's a valid carbon, but what? it does not work to go ahead and satisfy my obligation. So halacha l'maisa again, if I brought it as an eder and then I was mishana offered up shalol lishma, so is it offered up as an eder? No. It now becomes what? It now becomes a nedava. So we'll say, so that meaning that's what happens when you go ahead and you're offering up a carbon and you offered up shalol lishma. So the carbon works, it's an effective carbon, but it does not work to satisfy my obligation. So if I made a neder to bring a carbon, and then I offer up that carbon shalol lishma, is it a neder offering? Is it a neder offering? No. But rather, what is it? It's an adava. It's a gift offering. Ve'im lav yehin adava. So if you offer it up in the wrong, so in other words, it works, but it doesn't start an obligation. Unedava mishar l'shenu yebe. The Rabbi say now amud beis, first time amud beis. Now it's an adava. Now, we'll say when it comes to an adava, are you permitted to go ahead and change the designation of an adava? No. We'll say, so the idea being that the Gemara's, the Rav's understanding from this pasuk is that even if you are mishana, even if you made a mistake and you did one part of the avoda wrong, that does not give you a license to do the rest of the avoda wrong. So even if you are mishana by one aspect, ultimately, again, you try to get back on track for the remainder of the nidav of the carbon. So both say. So therefore, this ends the first part of the discussion. That teaches us, namely, two things. Halacha l'maisa: if a carbon mincha was offered up shalol lishma, what's its status? What's its status? Right, kosher, but doesn't count toward the owners. Right? So both say that's lesson number one. Lesson number two: that even if you made a mistake in the designation of the mincha, you're offered up shalol l'shma, just because you did one part of the avodah shalol l'shma does not give you license to perform the remainder parts of the avodah shalol l'shma as well. That's not from Rava, either based on the pasuk or based on a svara. Good. Back to the Mishnah. Both say this is actually very exciting. Amen. Here we go. Lema masnisin de lo Reb Shimon. We'll say our Mishnah does not reflect the view of Reb Shimon. Why? What does Reb Shimon hold? Here we go. The saying Reb Shimon Omer, Kol Menachos shenik mitzu shel lishman ksheros va'alu lebailim l'shem chova. Wow. We'll say to say that our Mishnah does not reflect the view of Reb Shimon is an incredible understatement. Because Reb Shimon, what does Reb Shimon hold? Reb Shimon holds that any mincha where the kamitza was done shel l'shavos, not only is the mincha kosher, but what? But what? It counts towards the owner's obligation. And by the way, you think I know you're blown away just by that. I can see it in your eyes. It gets even better. Look at Rashi. Reb Shimon Omer kol menachos afilu minchas chote. They both say, by the way, when Reb Shimon says kol menachos, according to Reb Shimon, literally means what? Every single mincha offering. Every single mincha offering, even if done shalol lishman, halacha l'maisa is what? Number one, halacha l'maisa is kosher and alu l'bailin, and satisfies the obligation of the owner. Now, where does Reb Shimon get this? Here we go. Sheina menachos domos l'zvachim. He says because a mincha is very different than a regular carbon, an animal offering. How so? Shakometz machavas l'shumar cheshes. Because we'll say, let's say someone offered up a machavas. I'm supposed to be offering up a carbon, a minchas machavas, type of mincha. And when the Kohen does the kamitza, he has in mind for marcheshes. The truth is, Reb Shimon posits the Kohen's das is absolutely irrelevant. Why? Because ma'aseha mochichen ala l'shemachvas. You both say Reb Shimon advances something amazing. We're going to get into this. There are multiple types of menachos. Here's the interesting part about menachos. We're both saying every single type of mincha is performed or is prepared differently. Reb Shimon says like this. If I'm going to bring what we call the minchas machavas, and the Kohen, when he does the kamitza, has in mind for marcheshes, that das is irrelevant, because you know what trumps that das, Rabbi saying? The actual actions. The mincha is being prepared as a machvas, So the fact that the Kohen had erroneous das for a marcheshes, says Reb Shimon, is irrelevant. We don't care about the das. Why? Because the das ultimately is eclipsed by the actions. Bosa, you hear this incredible Musar? It's amazing. Mamish, how lucky we are to begin this on Rosh Chodesh Elul. What's the Musar, Bosa? What's the Musar? It's not so important what you think. It's a lot more important what you do. Reb Shimon says, I don't care what the Kohen's thinking. What I care is what the Kohen's doing. So therefore, again, there is a minchas machavos. He should have in mind when he does the kmitza that it should be from machavos also. But if instead he has in mind from Archeshes, Reb Shimon says, I don't care. I don't care. Why? Because it's clear from his actions that he is preparing ultimately again a minchas machvos. And therefore, again, as we're going through Reb Shimon's, his idea is ma'aseh mochichen Allah. Its actions ultimately testify to the identity and the nature of the carbon being offered. Therefore, again, even erroneous das by Kohen Zon will say, again, incredible yisod. In life, don't worry so much about what you think. Focus so much more on what you do. The good thoughts will come afterwards. The good machshavas will come afterwards. We are an actional people, an actional religion. He goes on. We're going to get into all this. I'm not going to explain this type of menachos now because it's not relevant for our discussion. But chareva l'shumbalula, if he was offering up a minchas chareva, but the Kohen has the wrong das and he does the kamitz l'shumbalula, maseh mochichen aleh l'shum chareva. We'll say it is clear that what the way it's being prepared is that it's a minchas chareva. Abal bezvachim enokein. But I will say this logic of Rabbi Shimon only works by menachos. Bless you. Why? Only works by menachos. Why? Why? Because I will say it's so exciting. Each type of mincha is prepared differently. That doesn't work by animal sacrifices. About zvachim enokein, shchita achas lekulan, zricha achas lekulan, kabbalah achas lekulan. And also by animal sacrifices, there's one type of shchita, there's one type of zrika, there's one type of kabbalah. Now the truth is, we're going to discuss this. There are different types of zrika, and we're going to discuss this. There's lamala michot ha-sikra, lamata michot ha-sikra. But Reb Shimon is saying is, at the end of the day, you'll excuse me, zrika, right? Meaning, there are nuanced differences, but the maaseh is the same. We're going to get into this more. So we'll say this is really like a ground, what's the word? Shaking, right? An earth shaking, whatever. It's incredible, right? It's incredible. I was like, because what's the idea? Reb Shimon is saying, and now understand this is diametrically opposed to the Mishnah. The Mishnah understands a mincha in the context of regular karbanos. So we have a general principle in karbanos that, again, aside from certain types of offerings, if you do a carbon shelo lishma, the carbon is an effective carbon, doesn't count towards the owner's obligation. That's karbanos 101. Reb Shimon says, no, that's a din in animal sacrifices, not a din in menachos. Because by a mincha, the way it is prepared ultimately is a testament to the identity, the nature, and the title of the carbon. Therefore, even if the Kohen is mishana his das, even if the Kohen ultimately has wrong intent, that does not compromise the carbon. Therefore, Shimon holds that I will say every single type of mincha, even if done shelo lishman, is going to be kosher. Why? Ma'aseh mochichen aleha. Because its manner of preparation ultimately shows us indeed what type of mincha it is. Incredible. Says the Gemara, Hanichel Rav Ashi. Now I will say, this is actually, I don't remember like seeing a Gemara like this. It's a very structured Gemara. What's going to happen over here is as follows. At the end of Amud Beis, we're going to see there is a brisa where Reb Shimon contradicts himself. Reb Shimon seems to indicate that if you are mishana by a mincha, it does in fact compromise the mincha's effectiveness vis-a-vis its owner. We're not going to see that now. The Gemara, and I will say there's a whole bunch of opinions as to how to reconcile this statement of Reb Shimon, the two brises of Reb Shimon. What the Gemara now is doing, I will say, is essentially telling us the manners of reconciliation between the two brisos, even before it introduces us to the brise itself. So watch this. Hanichel Rav Ashi. So this makes sense according to Rav Ashi, now where did Rav Ashi come from? The Amar, kan bekometz machvas l'shum marchashes, kan bekometz minchas machavas l'shum minchas marchashes. So look at Rashi for just a moment. It's Rashi right across. Hanichel Rav Ashi. Now watch this. Dimitaritz l'kaman, because Rav Ashi is going to answer up later on. Kiraminim de Reb Shimon daran beduchta achrisim masnisin. Ad Rabbi Shimon dachar. So we're going to see that there's going to be another brisa of Rabbi Shimon, where Rabbi Shimon comes along and says that a mincha that is offered up shelo lishman is a kosher mincha, but doesn't work for the owners. So Rav Ashi reconciles the two brisos as saying the following: Umitaris lehu Rav Ashi da'ada Reb Shimon alu. When does Reb Shimon say that a mincha that is offered up shelo lishman works even for the owners? Ba'omer hareini kometz machavas l'shem archashes, where the Kohen says, I am hereby taking a kometz of mincha, a kometz of machvas, l'shem archeshes. They're both saying, now in that case, what's missing? There is no mention of mincha. So the Kohen essentially is making a nonsensical statement. Elashma dimana divrei ruach ba'almaninu. Vad kam Reb Shimon ba'alma dilo alu kegon diitker shma dimincha. So we'll say, watch this. So Rashi reconciles the two brises of Reb Shimon as saying, when the Kohen says mincha, machavas l'shem archeshes, but he doesn't mention anything to do with the mincha, so such a statement is irrelevant. That's Reb Shimon says that halacha l'maisa, the mincha works not only as a karban, but ultimately for the sake of the owner. Masha'inke, in the next brisa that says that if offered up shalosh shema doesn't work for the sake of the owner, that's where he mentions mincha. Masnisin mincha l'shum minchahi. You'd have to say that ultimately, again, the case of the Mishnah Rabbi is talking about what kind of case? Where the Mishnah said that a karban that is offered up, a mincha that is offered up shol v'shman, does not work for the sake of the owner. You'd have to say that's a case where the Kohen explicitly utters the word mincha. However, el Rabba, the Rava, ma'ikal emeimar. Rabbi says, according to Rava and to Rabba, what is there to say? Now Rava and Rab and Rava understand the contradiction of Reb Shimon in a different way. V'chitema v'kamishani Rabba kan b'shinui kodesh kan b'shinui bailim. Now we'll say the way Rabba wants to understand the reconciliation is as follows. Rabba holds Rabbi saying that according to Reb Shimon, when you have a shinui kodesh, which means when you offer up a mincha for the wrong type of mincha, Reb Shimon says the mincha is kosher and it satisfies the obligation of the owner. However, if you have a shinui bailim, which means what Rabbi is saying, the Kohen offers up the mincha for the right type of mincha, but what? For the wrong person. That's where even Reb Shimon will agree that the mincha is a valid offering, but it does not count to satisfy the obligation of the owner. Hamas nisin shinui kodeshu. Here's the problem. We'll say the Mishnah is not talking about a case of shinui bailim. The mincha is explicitly talking about a case of shinui kodesh. Diktani, keitzad lishman v'shelo lishman. L'shum minchas choti, l'shum minchas nedava. So I'll say ultimately again, the Mishnah, when it talks about a case, when it's talking about a case of lishman and shlo lishman, so it's not talking about a case, it's talking about a case of shinui kodesh, not a case of shinui bailim. So how do you reconcile the Mishnah? Vinami kid kamishani Rava. Maybe you'll say ultimately again, we'll use the reconciliation of Rava. What did Rava say? Kan bekometz mincha l'shum mincha, kan bekometz mincha l'shum zavach. Oh. So maybe when does Rabbi Shimon say that a mincha, even if offered up shelo v'shman, works even for the owner? That's when the kometz is done l'shem mincha, just the wrong mincha. When does Rabbi Shimon say that ultimately again the mincha will not be valid for the owner? That's where the kemitza was done not l'shem mincha, but what? L'shem zavach, for a different type of carbon, not much like for an animal offering. Hamas nisin mincha l'shum mincha. Rabbi say here's the problem. The Mishnah is talking about a case of us where the mincha is offered up l'shem mincha. Viktani shelo lishman ulishman l'shem minchas nedav l'shem minchas chote. Elo l'rava mechavarta masnisen delok Reb Shimon. Rather, Rabbi you have to say that according to Rabba and Rava, the Mishnah we just reflected ultimately does not reflect the view of Reb Shimon. So both say, so now let's get back on track for just a moment. So remember again, we're looping back now to Reb Shimon. So we have the Mishnah. Quick. Three simple points. Really two simple ones. That'll become three. That'll later on become four. That becomes six by tomorrow. I'll say, but the idea is as follows. Right? What does the Mishnah teach me? The Mishnah teaches me that halacha l'maisa, if a mincha is offered up shelo l'shman, what's the halacha? Kosher, but lo alu l'shem bailim. Doesn't count as the owner's obligation. Gemara introduced me to the position of Rav Shimon. What did Rav Shimon say? If offered up shelo l'shman, I'll say it's kosher what? For everything. It's a kosher offering and it works for the sake of the owner. Now we jumped ahead of ourselves and now we're going to get back on track. Now the Mishnah says, V'rami Reb Shimon. The truth is, Reb Shimon is going to contradict himself. Because what did Reb Shimon say? Here we go. Reb says an amazing brisa. Tisanya Reb Shimon Reb Shimon says, Kodesh Kadashim, Reb Shimon is actually quoting the pasuk. Kodesh Kadashim he. Kachatos uke'asham. Well, I'll say the pasuk itself. If you look at Rashi, actually, it's the last Rashi, the second to last short line of Rashi. B'mincha ksiv. Rabbi say this pasuk that Rabbi Shimon is quoting is written by the carbon mincha. What does the pasuk say? Kodesh kadashim hi b'mincha ksiv v'karei chatas v'asham. So we'll say, now watch this. The pasuk, when talking about mincha, says that mincha is a kodesh kadashim kechatas ukeasham. It's like a chatas, like an asham. So we'll say this is actually quite intriguing. So the mincha is kodesh kadashim, it's holy, and it's like a chatas and an asham. How is a mincha like a chatas and an asham? Watch this. Yeshmen kechatas, yeshmen keasham. We'll say there are certain menachos that are like a chatas, and certain menachos that are like an asham. How so? Minchas chote harehi kechatas. A minchas chote, Rabbi say, which is a mincha that is brought as a sin offering, is just like a chatas. Namely what? Lefichach kamsa shelo lishma. Therefore, Rabbi say, if you did the kamitza shelo lishma, psula kechatas. Remember again, this is back to our Zvachim days. We open up the first Mishnah Zvachim in the same way. Right? Kol Zvachim shenechshetan shelo lishma. So we'll say any carbon that was offered up shelo lishma, the carbon works, but it doesn't satisfy the owner's obligation. There was an exception to that rule. What's the exception to that rule? Chatos. They will say if you offer up a chatos shelo lishma, the halacha is the chatos does not work. The chatos does not work. So therefore the Gemara suggests that the carbon mincha is kechatos ka'asham. Sometimes a mincha is like a mincha, sometimes a mincha is like a chatos, sometimes a mincha is like an asham. Therefore the Gemara says like this: if you offer up a minchas chote, right? If you offer up a sin offering for the mincha, it is like a chatos. Just like a chatos shechta shelo lishman is not good, so too a minchas chote. If the kamitza was done shelo lishman, it is pas like a chatos. Minchas nedava harei ka'asham. A voluntary mincha, Rabbi says, like an asham. How so? Lefichach kamsa shelo lishma. Therefore, again, if the kamitza was done shelo lishman, if the kamitza is done shelo lishman, kshera. Ultimately, again, the carbon is kosher. Uke asham. And furthermore, it's like an asham. In what sense? Ma asham kosher ve'ino meratze. But say just like an asham, if offered up shelo lishma, the carbon is kosher, but what? Does not satisfy the obligation of the owner. Af minchas nedava kshera ve'ino meratze. So to say the minchas nedava is kosher, but it also does not affect atonement for the owner. So we'll say, so you see what do we have over here? A glaring contradiction to Rabbi Shimon. In Brayson number 1, Rabbi Shimon said that what? If a mincha, all menachos that are offered up, all menachos that are offered up shelo lishman, not only is the mincha kosher, but it satisfies the owner's obligation. And now in Brayson number 2, Rabbi Shimon is saying that what? That if you have a minchas chatos that is offered up shelo lishman, what's the halacha? The halacha is that it is pasul. Not only that, but if you offer up a regular mincha shelo lishman, the mincha is good, but what? It does not satisfy the owner's obligation. So Rabbi say polar opposite versions of Rabbi Shimon's opinion. How do we reconcile? Amar Rabbi says, Lo kasha, it's not a contradiction. Kan b'shinoi kodesh, kan b'shinoi bailim. So Rabbi say, Rabbi comes along and says it's not a contradiction. In the first brisa, Rabbi Shimon says shinui mincha is still kosher, and if it's all lebailim, that's where what? It's called the shinui bakodesh, which Rabbi say means that's a case of where you're offering up a mincha, but you're offering it up for the sake of the wrong mincha. See, if it's just a question of offering it up for the wrong mincha, Rabbi Shimon will say that what? The mincha is kosher and it satisfies the owner's obligation. Why does he say that? Oh, because ma'aseha mochichin aleha. Because the actions, the way you're preparing the mincha, ultimately is the testament to the type of mincha it is. The second brisa, where Rabbi Shimon says that if a mincha is offered up shelo lishma, the mincha is not good. Rabbi say that's a case of what? Shinui bailim. That's where you're offering it up for the wrong owner. If you're offering it up for the wrong owner, then Rabbi Shimon will say that halacha lemaisa, the mincha is not good. Well, I should say, when I say it's not good, if it's a minchas chote, it's totally pasul, and if it's a minchas nedava, it's kosher, but lo olu lebailim. Amar le Abai says, 1 second. Michte machshava de pasul rachmana hakishihi. The Abai says as follows: this idea that machshava can invalidate the carbon, it's based on a hekesh, right? It's based on the comparison ultimately again between mincha and chatas and asham. Take a look at Rashi just a moment. It's the first white line in Rashi. Michti machshav de pasul rachmana mincha keshi di iskish rachmana mincha lezvachim. Because remember again, the Torah compares mincha to zachar. We'll say that's the passage we just quoted before. Kodesh kadosh mi kachatas chasham. Kidichsiv kodesh kadosh mi kachatas chasham. Mazvachim pasla b'machshava kidichsiv hamakriv also. Lechash af mincha nami. Mali shinei kodesh mali shinei bailam. So we'll say the Gemara says like this. We know the idea that mincha invalidates, that machshav invalidates by a mincha based on the comparison to chatas and asham. So mali shinui kodesh, mali shinui bailim. What does it make a difference? If we'll say if your shinui and das was about shinui kodesh or shinui bailim, either way, the mincha should be possible. To which Rabbi Shmuel will respond, Amrlei maaseh mochichin. So we'll say the idea over here is that this idea of ma'aseh mochichin, the kamar of Shimon Svarihi, that we'll say ultimately again this idea that when it comes to mincha, ma'aseh mochichin, ultimately again the way you prepare the mincha is the ultimate testament to the identity of the mincha. This is a svara of Reb Shimon, because Reb Shimon holds that Reb Shimon darash time dikra. Ultimately, again, Reb Shimon holds, Rabbi say, that we could darshan time dikra, that we could, when coming to mitzvahs, Rabbi say, we're going to discuss this in greater depth later on, but Reb Shimon holds that halacha l'maisa, when trying to understand a particular mitzvah, you could look for the reason over here. Why should mincha be different than any other type of carbon? Because Rabbi say mincha is different. Why? Because the manner in which you perform or which you prepare the mincha varies from mincha to mincha. Therefore, one can make the cogent argument that even if the kohen had the wrong das, we don't care about the das. As long as the mincha was prepared the way the mincha is supposed to be prepared, Reb Shimon will say that halacha l'maisa, again, the mincha will be valid. The lo minkara, but ultimately again, where it's not recognizable, so pasa rachmana. Machshava de minkara lo pasa rachmana. So I should say it differently. Machshava de lo minkara pasa rachmana. Machshava de minkara lo pasa rachmana. So we'll say ultimately a case in a situation where what we call it's machshava de lo minkara pasa rachmana. Machshava de minkara lo pasa rachmana. So in a case ultimately again where the shinui is something recognizable, that's where the Torah will invalidate the mincha. But if the shinui is unrecognizable, the Torah will not invalidate the mincha. So says the Gemara, but if that's the case, Olas Sa'ov. You know what? Actually, yeah, let's do one more case and then we'll stop for today. So we'll say, so what the Gemara is suggesting is as follows: that according to Rabbi Shimon, where the mistake or where the shinui is recognizable, ultimately again that shouldn't validate the carbon. But where the shinui is unrecognizable, the carbon should not become invalidated. To which the Gemara says, well, if that's the case, elamei ata, olas ha'ov shemalka lemala mishum chata sa'ov tirtze. Well, say if you have the following case, an olas ha'ov, right, a bird ola, that malika was done lemala. Now, we'll say, remember again, the halach is, if you look at Rashi, olas ha'ov, it's about 6 lines up from the bottom, nasis lemal nichot ha'sikra. We'll say the blood of an olas ha'ov is applied above the red line of the mizbeach. So now watch this. So let's listen to this. Let's say you took the blood of the Ola Sa'of and you did the Malika, the blood application above the Chota Sikra, but you did it Mishum Chata Sa'of, but you had in mind to do Chata. So we'll say, now for Chatas, what's Talacha? You do it below the line. So we'll say, so now what happened over here? You were supposed to do an Ola, but you had in mind the wrong machshava. So what should be the halacha? Tirtza. The carbon should work. Rabbi, why should the carbon work? Because at the end of the day, where did you apply the blood? Above the line. In accordance with the true identity of the carbon, which is an ola. So here's a case of where what? My machshava was wrong, but the ma'aso is absolutely correct. The carbon should therefore be good. Tirtza. Ma'aseh mochichin aleha the ola sa'ofi. Because we'll say, here's an example of where the actions clearly show that it's an ola. Because we'll say, if it was a chata sa'of, then what? Then the mais, again, the blood would be applied below the red line. Atu chata sa'of milasa. So we'll say, ultimately, again, you're trying to say that there is no case of chata sa'of where the blood is applied above the red line. Hamar mar malika b'chomaka b'mizbeach kshera. We'll say, after all, we learned that what? That bidi eved, malika b'chol makom is kshera. I will say that at the end of the day, even though there is a distinction between chatas and ola, where the blood applications, where the malika is done, Bidi Evid, wherever it's done, is kosher. So I will say, so understand, we're going to stop over here for today. We're going to do a little bit of Tomer Devorah together. I will say, but understand what we're ending off with over here. The way we reconcile, so we have we have the Mishnah, and then we have a contradiction between the positions of Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon in Bryce number 1 seems to say that what? That halacha l'maisa, even if an ola done with the wrong machshavas, the carbon itself is kosher, and it is ola l'shem bailim. In Brisa number 2, Rabbi Shimon says that if the chatos was done for the wrong machshavas, then what? Then the mincha was done for the wrong machshavas. The mincha is a valid carbon, but it does not go ahead and count towards the owners. And in the case of chatos or minchas kenos, it won't count for anything. What I will say now, the way we're trying to reconcile this is as follows. Clearly in Bryson 1, what Rabbi Shimon is trying to teach us is as follows: that halacha l'maisa, wherever ma'aseha mochichen aleha, wherever the actions tell you clearly what type of carbon it is, then what? The machshava to a certain degree is irrelevant. Now when I say, I don't want you to think irrelevant that it doesn't matter. It matters, but what it means for our purposes is that what? It won't compromise the carbon. It won't compromise the carbon. Now, if that is true, so what we're saying over here, according to Rabbi Shimon, is that where again the machshava, the erroneous machshava, is not really visible in the maisa, then ultimately again the maisa will be valid. If the erroneous machshava is visible in the maisa, then the maisa will be invalid. So we saw this by Ola Sa'ov, and we're going to continue a little bit to give some more examples. Rabbi will say, but essentially you understand what the underlying tension over here is? The underlying tension is a tension between what you think and what you do. Which I will say for most of us is an underlying tension each and every day. In my heart and in my mind, I have a whole series of things that I think and that I know are right. The problem, of course, becomes when what? When my actions paint a dramatically different picture. So the shaila is, in general, how do you reconcile, again, one type of kavanah with another type of asiyah? So Meretz Hashem, again, we're going to continue with this reconciliation. The Shita of Rabbi Shimon. We'll also stop over here for today, and we're going to begin just for a few moments, because I know the hour is late, a little bit of Tomer Devorah. So we'll say there are, and for anyone who's staying, there are some copies over here. We're beginning to say for now. So just to give you a little bit of background. So the Tomer Devorah, there are also, again,